Extraterrestrial elders study human grandparents because they radiate unconditional joy. Part 1. The detection equipment in the consortium's Deep Space Observatory had been running for 300 years without a single anomaly. When the alarm finally sounded, every scientist on duty assumed it was a malfunction. It was not a malfunction. Something on Earth was producing emotional energy readings that made no sense. The patterns every known principle of evolutionary biology that the consortium had documented across 47 sentient species. Specifically, elderly humans were generating massive spikes of joy for no apparent reason. Ambassador studied the data with his 4 eyes narrowed in confusion. He had lived for 400 years and advised his people through countless challenges. In all that time, he had never seen readings like this. Among his own people, the emotional capacity decreased steadily with age. It had to. Older minds needed space for accumulated knowledge, not feelings. The same pattern held true for every other species they had encountered. But not humans. "Show me the source of the strongest reading," commanded. The screen displayed a small dwelling in a place called Ohio. Inside, a 73-year-old human female sat at a table with a juvenile human, both applying colored liquids to paper. The elderly female's emotional output registered higher than soldiers in battle, higher than athletes at the moment of victory, higher than humans during mating. "What are they doing?" asked Doctor, the scientist beside him. "Unknown," replied, "but we must investigate." 3 days later, a consortium shuttle landed discreetly outside's home. She answered the door wearing an apron covered in flour, looking entirely unsurprised to see 3 alien beings on her porch. "Are you here about the noise complaint?" she asked. "Because I already told Mrs. Henderson that my grandson isn't being too loud. He's 5. 5-year-olds make noise." "We are not here about noise," said carefully. "We are scientists studying emotional phenomena. Our instruments detected unusual readings from this location. May we observe?" Looked them up and down, then shrugged. "Sure, why not? But you'll have to wait until after dinner. My daughter's dropping off Tommy in 20 minutes and I promised him we'd make cookies." The aliens set up their equipment in the corner of her kitchen, trying to be unobtrusive. Once grandson arrived, their instruments immediately began fluctuating wildly. The child, small even for a juvenile human, ran into the room shouting "Grandma" at maximum volume. His face transformed completely. Every measurement of joy, love, and happiness spiked simultaneously. She caught the child in her arms, lifted him despite her age, and spun him in a circle while he laughed. "Impossible," Doctor whispered, checking her equipment 3 times. "The energy expenditure alone should be prohibitive for an elderly female, and the emotional output has no survival correlation." Watched closely, set the boy down, and immediately began asking him about his day. The child talked rapidly about something called kindergarten, and a friend named Sophie, and how he had learned to write the letter R. Listened as though the child was delivering critical intelligence about an incoming threat, nodding seriously and celebrating each mundane detail. "Grandma, can we make the chocolate ones?" Tommy asked. "We can make whatever kind you want, sweetheart," replied. The aliens observed the cookie-making process with growing confusion. Let the child pour ingredients, even though he spilled half of them. She let him crack eggs, even though pieces of shell fell into the bowl. She praised every clumsy action as though it demonstrated exceptional skill. Her emotional readings never dropped below what the consortium would classify as extreme happiness. "Doctor," said finally, "may I ask you a question?" "Call me, and sure, but keep your voice down. Tommy's concentrating." She pointed to where the boy was using a spoon to scoop dough onto a baking sheet, his tongue sticking out in concentration. "Why does this activity produce such intense positive emotion in you?" Looked at him as though he had asked why water was wet. "Because I'm spending time with my grandson. Look at him. He's perfect." The aliens looked. The child was objectively imperfect by every measurable standard. He was clumsy, inefficient, and his cookie placement showed no understanding of optimal spacing for heat distribution. But he provides you no resources, pressed. He increases your energy expenditure. He does not enhance your status or survival probability. Yet our instruments register joy levels typically associated with species-critical achievements. Was quiet for a moment watching Tommy. Then she smiled. You're right. He doesn't do any of those things. He just exists and I get to be part of his life. That's enough. Enough for what? Enough to be happy. The concept troubled deeply. In society, happiness was the reward for achievement, for contribution, for advancing the collective good. Emotions without purpose were considered signs of mental illness. Yet was clearly healthy, highly educated based on her credentials, and had once held a position of great responsibility as a surgeon. She had simply chosen to spend her later years in this bizarre state of purposeless joy. After the cookies were done and Tommy had eaten 3 while telling a long, barely coherent story about a cartoon character, his daughter arrived to collect him. The goodbye process took another 10 minutes, involving multiple hugs, promises about tomorrow, and the child running back twice because he forgot to hug his grandmother again. When they were alone, offered the aliens cookies and tea. They declined politely. Said, "We have been studying emotional patterns across the galaxy for centuries. What we observed tonight appears unique to humans. Your species keeps elderly individuals within family units, where they expend significant resources on juveniles who are not their direct offspring. This behavior has no parallel." "You don't have grandparents?" asked, looking genuinely sad for them. "We have elders. They reside in contemplation centers where they preserve knowledge and advise on complex matters, but they do not engage in activities like this." He gestured at the cookie-covered kitchen. "Their emotional capacity is reserved for more important functions." Was quiet for a long moment, sipping her tea. "That sounds lonely." "Lonely? Your elders, stuck in centers just thinking all the time. Don't they miss being around family, around kids?" "Miss implies an absence of something necessary. They have everything necessary." "Do they have anyone who lights up when they walk in a room? Anyone who thinks they're the most important person in the world, just because they exist?" Had no answer for that. Before they left, invited them to return whenever they wanted. "You're welcome here, and if you want to really understand grandparents, you should observe more than just me. We're all different, but we've all got that same love for our grandkids. It's just part of being human." On the shuttle back to their research station, Doctor reviewed the data. "Ambassador, the energy readings remained elevated for hours after the child departed. She continued producing joy simply from remembering the interaction." "I know," said quietly. "It's completely illogical." "Yes. Should we expand the study?" Thought about's question. Did their elders have anyone who thought they were the most important person in the world? Did he? He was respected, admired, even revered, but beloved simply for existing. No, that concept didn't exist in culture. Maybe it should. "Yes," he said finally. "We expand the study. I want observations of human grandparents across every culture, every region. There's something here we don't understand, something that might be important." "Important how?" "I don't know yet, but a species doesn't develop a universal behavior without reason, even if that reason isn't immediately apparent to us." The next morning, the consortium established a research station in orbit and began systematic observation of humanity's elderly population. What they would discover over the coming weeks would challenge everything they thought they knew about the purpose of aging, the nature of love, and what it meant to create a civilization that could truly last. Part 2. Within 2 weeks, the consortium had established observation posts in 20 countries. The data that flowed back was consistent, puzzling, and utterly unprecedented. In Tokyo, they watched 80-year-old teach her granddaughter to fold origami cranes. Her hands were gnarled with arthritis, making each fold difficult, yet she smiled through the pain. When her granddaughter made a crooked crane, praised it as beautiful and kept it in a special box with all the others. In Nairobi, 75-year-old Samuel spent his mornings teaching his 3 traditional Kikuyu dances. His knees ached, but he demonstrated each step carefully, clapping and laughing when the children spun in circles instead of following the proper pattern. In Mexico City, Abuela, who was 91 years old, insisted on cooking tamales with her every Sunday despite her family begging her to rest. She said the kitchen felt empty without small hands helping, even though those hands made twice the mess and half the tamales. Doctor compiled the reports with growing frustration. There must be a logical explanation. Perhaps humans have discovered that elder engagement with juveniles produces some measurable benefit we haven't identified. Wasn't convinced. He had been reviewing historical human data, reading their literature, and watching their recorded media. Grandparents appeared everywhere in human culture, always in this same role of seemingly purposeless devotion. It went back as far as human records existed. "I want to conduct detailed interviews," he announced. "We need to understand their perspective." They started with Frank, a 68-year-old retired electrician in Ohio who volunteered to speak with them. Frank arrived at their meeting location wearing a shirt that said "World's Best Grandpa," with pictures of 5 different children on it. "Those are your?" Doctor asked. "Yep, got 5 of them, ages 3 to 12. Handful and a half, but I love every minute." "Our records indicate you spend approximately 18 hours per week providing," said. "You receive no monetary compensation. Your own reproductive years ended decades ago. Can you explain the benefit of this arrangement?" Frank looked confused. "The benefit? I get to spend time with my grandkids." "Yes, but what do you gain?" "I just told you. I get to spend time with my grandkids." Doctor tried a different approach. "In our society, elders who cannot contribute knowledge or labor are retired to centers where they can reflect and preserve memories. This is considered honorable and efficient. Do you not feel you could serve humanity better by focusing your remaining years on intellectual pursuits?" Frank laughed. "Lady, I spent 40 years wiring houses. I'm not going to solve any great mysteries, but I can teach my grandson how to build a birdhouse, take my granddaughter to the park, or play peekaboo with the little one for the 40th time today." "You played the same game 40 times?" asked. "Yeah, she thinks it's hilarious every single time. So do I." "But you gain nothing." Frank's expression changed. He set down his coffee and looked directly at, "See, that's where you're wrong. I gain everything. Last Tuesday, my 3-year-old granddaughter told me she loved me all the way to the moon. My grandson drew a picture of us fishing together and gave it to me like it was made of gold. My oldest granddaughter, she's having trouble with some kids at school, and she called me to talk about it because she said I'm a good listener." He pulled out his phone and showed them his lock screen. 5 smiling children in a messy group photo, with Frank in the middle making a silly face. "This right here, this is what I worked my whole life for. Not the money, not the career. I worked so I could build a good life, raise good kids, and now I get to be here for their kids. You say I gain nothing. I've gained a reason to get up every morning. I've gained more love than one person has a right to. And when I'm gone, these kids will remember that their grandpa thought they hung the moon." The aliens were quiet. Frank continued, his voice softer. "My parents both died when I was young. I never had grandparents. I promised myself that if I ever had grandkids, I'd be there for them. Every recital, every game, every time they needed someone to just listen. Because kids need to know that someone thinks they're special just for being alive, not for what they do or achieve, just for existing." After Frank left, Doctor ran the emotional data from the interview. His joy readings during the phone photograph moment exceeded his readings from his own wedding day, archived in medical records. This makes no logical sense. But was beginning to understand. Perhaps logic isn't the correct framework. They interviewed more grandparents. In Mexico City told them, "Mi para mis no," which their translator rendered as "my love for my has no limits." She explained that she had lived through poverty, revolution, and loss, but her made her feel rich. Samuel in Nairobi said, "These children are my legacy, but more than that, they are my joy. When I teach them our dances, I see their eyes light up, and I remember what it was like to be young and discover the world. They make me young again." In Tokyo was more philosophical. "In my culture, we say that are the reward for not killing your children when they were teenagers," she laughed. "But truly, it is a gift to love without the burden of discipline. Their parents must teach rules and responsibility. I get to just love them and make them happy. It is the best job I have ever had." The pattern was universal across cultures, continents, and contexts. Human grandparents loved their intensely, unconditionally, and without expectation of return. This love produced measurable joy that seemed to defy the normal decline of emotional capacity with age. Called a meeting of the research team after 6 weeks of observation. "I have a hypothesis, but it concerns me." "Speak," doctor said. "What if we've been wrong? What if the optimization our civilizations have pursued, the efficiency and logic we prize, what if it cost us something critical?" The room fell silent. "The home world," continued slowly, "has experienced declining birth rates for 3 centuries. Young report feeling disconnected from our history, unmotivated by the wisdom of our elders. They describe existence as technically perfect but emotionally empty." Doctor nodded slowly. "The face similar challenges. Our youth are physically perfect, intellectually accomplished, but surveys indicate widespread feelings of purposelessness." "Because we removed this," said, gesturing at the data streams showing countless human grandparents around the world, playing, teaching, laughing, loving. "We optimized away unconditional love across generations. We forgot how to love someone simply because they exist." "But that cannot be essential," another scientist protested. "It provides no survival advantage." "Doesn't it?" Pulled up human population data. "Humanity has thrived despite being physically weaker than many species, despite lacking advanced technology until recently, despite countless wars and disasters. Their population grows. Their young are emotionally resilient. Their families are cohesive across generations." He pulled up another chart. Human children are typically surrounded by at least 3 generations of caregivers. They grow up with parents who discipline and teach, and grandparents who simply adore them. They learn both responsibility and unconditional love. They become adults who can weather hardship because they were loved without condition as children. "You're suggesting," doctor said slowly, "that this apparently purposeless joy serves a purpose we cannot measure with our instruments." "I'm suggesting that maybe it's the most important purpose of all." Part 3. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 2 months into the study, the home world sent an urgent message. Their psychological research division had been monitoring the consortium's human grandparent study, and they had questions. Lots of questions. Within a week, delegations from 6 different species arrived at the research station. They all faced the same problems: declining birth rates, disconnected youth, societies that functioned perfectly on paper but felt hollow in practice. They had thought these were separate issues, unique to their own civilizations. The human data suggested otherwise. Arranged for the delegates to visit Earth and observe directly. They spread out across the planet, watching grandparents in their natural habitat. What they saw shook many of them deeply. The Moth Collective representative, a being whose elders had deliberately atrophied their emotional centers to become living databases, spent a week observing a grandmother in Seoul. The woman, Park Min, was 79 years old and cared for her grandson every day while his parents worked. She was teaching him to play piano. The boy was terrible at it, missing notes and losing rhythm constantly. Park Min never corrected harshly. She simply smiled, encouraged, and celebrated every small success. When the boy finally played a simple song all the way through, she clapped as though he had performed a masterpiece. The moth representative watched her joy reading spike higher than their own elders experienced during critical information transfers. That night, it sent a message home. We have made a terrible mistake. Invited all the delegates to a meeting at home. She had agreed to answer their questions, though she seemed amused by all the attention. I don't understand what's so complicated about this, said, pouring tea for a room full of aliens. You love your grandkids, that's it. That's the whole thing. But your species evolved this behavior, said the delegate. There must be an evolutionary advantage. Oh, there probably is, agreed. Kids who grow up loved by multiple generations probably do better. They're more confident, more secure. They know they matter to someone, but that's not why we do it. Then why? Asked. Thought for a moment. When my daughter was born, I loved her more than I thought possible. I would have died for her without hesitation. But I also had to raise her, which meant rules and discipline and sometimes being the bad guy. That's part of being a parent. She smiled. But when Tommy was born, it was different. I'm not responsible for discipline anymore. His parents handle that. I get to be the one who thinks he's perfect exactly as he is. When he comes to my house, he's safe, he's loved, and he doesn't have to earn it or prove anything. He just has to exist. And this serves him how? Asked the moth representative. It gives him a foundation. He knows that no matter what he does, no matter what mistakes he makes, at least one person in the world thinks he's wonderful. That confidence stays with you. It helps you take risks, try new things, bounce back from failure, because you learned early that your worth isn't tied to your achievements. The room was quiet as the aliens processed this. Continued. But it's not just good for him, it's good for me too. You asked what I gain. I gain purpose. I gain joy. I gain a reason to wake up every morning excited about life. After my husband died, I was lost for a while. Then Tommy came along, and suddenly I had this little person who needed his grandma, who thought I was the most important person in his world. She pulled out her phone and showed them a video. Tommy, age 3, running toward the camera shouting, "Grandma's here," with pure delight on his face. You can't fake that. He's genuinely happy to see me. When was the last time any of you felt that? When was the last time someone's whole face lit up just because you walked into a room? Realized he couldn't remember. He was respected, even revered, but beloved with that kind of uncomplicated joy. Never. A delegate spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. Our young report feeling that they exist only to fulfill functions, to contribute to society, to preserve knowledge, to maintain efficiency. They describe feeling like components in a machine rather than individuals who matter. Because nobody loves them just for existing, said gently. They're loved for what they do, not who they are. That's not enough. It was never enough. Over the next month, the delegates returned home with their reports. The data was irrefutable. Human societies, for all their problems, produced emotionally resilient individuals who found meaning in family connections across generations. The inefficient practice of keeping elders integrated into family life created a feedback loop of unconditional love that strengthened the entire social structure. The recommendations varied by species, but the core principle was the same: reintegrate elders into family units without productivity requirements. Encourage intergenerational bonding based on affection rather than utility. Allow the old to love the young simply because they exist. Some species embraced the changes immediately. Others moved more slowly, hampered by centuries of cultural optimization. But the conversation had started, and it was spreading. 6 months after the initial discovery, requested one final meeting with. She invited him to Tommy's 6th birthday party. The chaos was overwhelming. 20 human children ran in circles, fueled by sugar and excitement. Adults supervised with expressions of patient exhaustion. And in the middle of it all, sat on the floor with Tommy, helping him open presents while he chattered excitedly about each gift. When Tommy opens present, a carefully selected educational toy about space exploration, the child's eyes went wide. "Grandma, look, it's aliens, real aliens." "Well, one real alien," laughed, gesturing at, "he's real." Tommy ran over and hugged leg, which was the only part he could reach. "Thank you, this is the best present ever." His instruments, still recording, registered his own emotional response. For the first time in 400 years, he felt something like pure joy. Not satisfaction at a job completed, not pride in achievement, just simple happiness at making a small human child happy. Later, after the party wound down and most guests had left, helped clean up. She moved slowly, clearly tired but still smiling. "I understand now," said quietly, "what we've lost, what we forgot." "It's not too late to remember," said. "That's the thing about love, it's never too late to start. It will take generations to rebuild what we dismantled. Then you'd better start now." Before he left Earth, arranged for a monument to be created on the home world. It would stand in the capital city, where every citizen would see it. The statue depicted a human grandmother holding a child, neither figure doing anything productive or important. They were simply together, existing in a moment of uncomplicated happiness. The inscription, written in and several other languages, read, "Some inefficiencies are actually optimizations we forgot how to measure. Love is the most important one." 3 years later, received a message from. It was a photo of Tommy, now 9 years old, standing next to the Earth monument that had been built in response to the Alien One. The boy wore a shirt that said, "My grandma is out of this world," and was grinning at the camera. Below the photo had written, "He wants to be a scientist when he grows up. Says he wants to study how to make aliens happy like you made him happy. I told him that understanding love is the best science there is. Thank you for reminding the universe what really matters." Displayed the message in his quarters where he could see it every day. On the first generation of grandparent integration was, young parents, skeptical at first, reported that their children seemed different, happier, more secure, more confident. The elders, released from their contemplation centers and welcomed into family homes, reported something even more significant. For the first time in centuries, they felt needed, not for their knowledge or their function, but simply for themselves. One elderly female sent him a message that he saved. "I have a granddaughter now. She is 3. Yesterday she drew a picture of me and gave it to me like it was precious. It was poorly rendered and served no function. I have never received a more valuable gift." The change was slow, but it was happening. Across the consortium, species were rediscovering what humanity had never forgotten, that loving the young for no reason might be the most important reason of all. And somewhere in Ohio, sat at her kitchen table with her grandson, making cookies and radiating unconditional joy, completely unaware that she had helped reshape the emotional architecture of galactic civilization. She was too busy being a grandma to notice. And that perhaps was the point.